To be talking about my favourite Pokemon generation. I say favourite Pokemon generation, it's from least favourite to favourite. And I'm going to just say some little rules before, and then I'll get straight onto the video. And the first rule is the remakes, like Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and there are more, they won't be counted as as whichever game they are remade from. They'll be counted in the generation they were in. However, they won't be as important, and like the main game I will be focusing on will be the first game that came out in that generation, and that will be the same with the third versions. However, they will be considered into the consideration. That's also the same with Black and White 2. So with that out of the way, let's get started. And my least favourite generation, and here's when people are going to boo at me, and that is Pokemon Generation 4 or Diamond and Pearl. Okay, I know a lot of people love these games, however, they're not that, I just don't think they're that good, honestly. The rival is okay, and Barry, and he's okay, and the villains, Team Galactic, they're just, again, they're nothing special. They just go around and stuff, and their plot is a bit iffy-weefy. Cyrus is a quite cool boss, though, and the story, yeah, it's a bit iffy-weefy, I know, and the beginning was really, really slow. Also, the game does run at snail pace, and honestly, I would recommend just playing Pokemon Platinum if you want to experience Diamond Pearl, because this improves a lot of what Diamond Pearl falls on. However, I don't think Diamond Pearl is that good. The cities are a bit bland, and I know one thing that was good about the games that people liked when it came out was the internet connection. However, this also proves the point that the games have aged badly, because the internet doesn't exist on the DS anymore. So it means the only benefit of these games in my mind is already gone, and lost in time. But I will like a remake of these games in the future, because I think there is still potential in these games. Also, the graphics, even though a lot of people do say there's a massive jump, I struggle to notice what the difference between this game and the and Sapphire and all those games. They just look all the same. I don't know what I know they have a bit more of a 3D effect, but it's not important. Anyway, I could ramble on about these games a lot more. Is there any positive can say about them? Well, I like a lot of the Pokemon, in Diamond Pearl that they released. I think some of them are some of the most memorable, like Luxray and well, Licky is quite memorable, was his funny name. Turtwig's quite a cool little Pokemon, and also the anime series for it was pretty good. I quite enjoyed it. So yeah, and also we'll say that the Diamond and Pearl does have, Generation 4 as a whole did have some of the best remakes ever in video game history. Just saying. Anyway, let's move on to the next Pokemon game, X and Y. Pokemon X and Y, they're definitely a revolutionising game, and because Generation 6 added a lot of new things like Fairy type, first 3D and stuff. They were very revolutionising. However, the games just didn't feel like complete, because I felt they wanted to have a third version. However, none actually ever came out, so basically Pokemon X and Y was just left in the dust. It's a bit of a shame, really, because I think they really should have had a third version. However, I will say a lot of the cool features they have, like Fairy type, Mega Evolutions, and also just customization, these will last forever, and I really like a remake of these, so come on Game Freak, make X and Y a remake, even though I know it'll be a long time until they will, or at least visit Kalos again, because we still have unexplored potential here. But yeah, I do love X and Y, and also do love the Pokemon in X and Y, like Go-Goat, Pancham, and other Pokemon. I could be listing them on for a while if I thought about it. Or Froakie, that's definitely one that's quite cool. Also, Fennekin's pretty nice Pokemon as well. It did have not a very good story, that's another thing. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, Generation 1 is very revolutionising, being the first generation. However, there is a reason why they remade this generation twice, and that is because it's not aged super well. The graphics are quite nostalgic, but that's all they are. The music's revolutionising, and that I love still, and I can't argue it. However, like, things like just Pokemon, I can't remember, there was something about the original, the Pokeballs can miss and stuff, I think, in the original generation. Sleeping is just annoying, because obviously they can just put you straight back to sleep and you can't attack. It's got some problems. The story's still quite good. It's not obviously the most deep story, but it's definitely, well, better than some of the other stories. X and Y's. But yeah, it's a good story, and I wouldn't say it's groundworks of what Pokemon is, and it does make a great sequel. I'll go on to that sequel soon. But anyway, even though this game hasn't aged very well, it's it isn't the worst game out there, and I think it's, the sequels did, the future games did fix a lot of the problems, as well as both remakes of this game, because actually, thinking about it, they remade it twice, proving the point, and not just because you couldn't trade from Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, and it proves the point that these games, even though they're revolutionary, they weren't perfect, and, I feel Pokemon have fixed a lot of problems with this generation and expanded on it, and that's a good thing. I don't ever expect the original game in any game series to be perfect, and some game series take longer than others. Anyway, I'm going to move on to the next generation, and that's Generation 3. I feel Generation 3 is a bit underrated in some ways. I don't know, people don't seem to talk about it too much, and I like Generation 3 because of, well, the legendaries are pretty cool, and I think Rayquaza should really, is one of the cooler Pokemon, and also Groudon and Kyogre are quite cool, and I feel, even though the last two generations were great, this actually is probably the first one we got stage of a traditional Pokemon game where there's quite a bit more of a deep story, and the narrative does, the story does take the venture through and stuff, and I quite like it. I think, I don't know why people just don't seem to enjoy them too much. I don't know why. Some of the Pokemon I think could be slightly better, but not all. There was still quite some good Pokemon. I like the starters, they're pretty cool, and I like a lot of the other Pokemon. I just don't think all of the Pokemon are amazing, but I think a lot of them are good, and the graphics are pretty good, I have to be honest. For the Game Boy Advance, then definitely not bad. Anyway, but also Pokemon Emerald is bonkersly hard. If you want a hard Pokemon game, play this. Anyway, and yeah, the Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, they're great remakes. They're definitely not, they stick quite to the original, but they do add in some improvements. And why wasn't the Sevii Island in Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu and Eevee? I'll never understand that. But apart from that, let's move on to my third favourite generation, and Generation 2 has to be in the top 3. Come on, it's got 2 regions, it's, well, got a very shiny box, and it's got some memorable characters, some great Pokemon that Pokemon Game Freak don't seem to like to notice about. They only care about the original 150, and they really did balance the game quite a bit, because actually that's one thing I didn't mention about Generation 1. The game is so unbalanced, and even with the Pokemon typing, because people say that Pokemon Generation 1 Pokemon's great, however, they're great for if they were from a different generation as Generation 1, because the typings are all over the place with tons of grass and water type Pokemon, and then barely any dragon and poison. So, you know, it's not the best generation out there, but Generation 1, but I do think Generation 2 fixes almost all those problems apart from the stones. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to make getting all the stones impossible, but yeah, they decided to do that. But yeah, I think Pokemon Gold, Silver and Crystal, as well as having the best remakes out there, are probably some of the best Pokemon games because of, and not just because of the post-game and stuff, but that does help. And I think Pokemon Crystal's a nice upgrade. It's not anything massive they did in this, but they definitely did a lot. Well, they did a lot more than Pokemon Yellow did, and I think, yeah, I think having a female character to play as is pretty cool, because this is proving that Pokemon and video games do care about their female audience. Anyway, let's go on to my second favourite generation, and that is Generation 7. I know a lot of people are going, my top 2 are going to be my probably most argumentative, because remember, a lot of people do have very different opinions about what their favourites is. I know a lot of people love Generation 4, but I don't. But anyway, Generation 7 is just, with Sun and Moon, are just good, with Sun and Moon having a great story, and I really think these games are pretty, they're really fun, and they're actually really beautiful on the 3DS, surprisingly. Yes, they look a bit pixely at times, however, they are still good. And I do love the Alolan tropical climate. I like also a lot of the Pokemon. I think Alolan forms and regional variant forms should definitely carry on, and having no HMs, what it should have happened since Generation 2. Why what have they been in Pokemon games for so long? But yeah, I love Generation 7. I think the story's excellent. I do wish they did a best with the story in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I do think they could have done a better job with that. But I do love the difficulty of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I do think Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are just really quite a weird game, because yeah, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon they seem to very similar story. However, they're like 5 times more difficult. And to be honest, I like having a difficulty in Pokemon. It's especially because a lot of the last Pokemon games have been so easy. So yeah, this I think is really good. Now, you probably have all worked out what my favourite Pokemon generation is. However, some people I can see might disagree, but I think that let's move on to my favourite Pokemon generation, Generation 5. I will be honest, I'm a bit nostalgic for it, so, you know, I'm sure a lot of people will definitely disagree with almost all my opinions. However, I love Generation 5. I think the story is great, the universe is a beautiful looking region. I think Pokemon Black and White are really fun games, and I know some people complain about the Pokemon, and I'm not going to say all of the Pokemon are amazing. Let's not talk about necessarily the ice cream Pokemon, Vanillite, but a lot of the other Pokemon, I think there are quite a lot of good Pokemon in Generation 5. I feel people like to point out the bad ones before the good ones. And some of my favourite Pokemon are Scraggy and, well, Tepig, and because I have, obviously, again, nostalgic feelings, but I also think Haxorus looks really cool, and even, and also Hydreigon's a very strong Pokemon, even though it was weakened when it hit Generation 6, still a very good Pokemon, and I think, yeah, people just seem to point out some of the negatives. However, there were some really good things, like, the story was actually really good, even though I just skipped the writing through the first, well, when I went through it all. Also, another Pokemon, I love Victini. Yeah, Victini's amazing. And also, this was kind of the last region where they event Pokemon weren't too bad. Especially next generation, they started really falling. But this generation, they weren't too bad and stuff. And anyway, I feel that Generation 5 got some really good Pokemon. And yeah, I think the villains are some very memorable characters and stuff. And Black and White 2, I feel I like them. I don't think they're as good as the originals, because even though people will disagree with me having about this because they like the older Pokemon, but I felt having the older Pokemon was fine at the first new areas. However, the old areas I didn't like as much, because like the sewers in that big city, I've forgotten what it's called. I just didn't think those Pokemon shouldn't be there. However, I liked them when they were in their actual areas, and you know, I think there's a lot of good areas and stuff, and there are a lot of Pokemon to catch. So yeah, I will probably go into a lot of these games, all of them really, but in the later dates. But that's just my list from my least to my favourite generation out there, and I hope you enjoyed it. I will probably have to revisit this topic again in the future, because Pokemon are going to add Generation 8 coming out this year, so you know, I can't really get away of not talking about that and putting that in my favourite list at some point. But yeah, this was just my personal opinion. I know a lot of you are going to disagree, but I'm sure you're all going to expressively write that in the comments, and yeah, and tell me why I'm wrong. But yeah, anyway, I know that Generation 5 does handhold people, but anyway, let's move on. And than that, and so yeah, I think I've mentioned everything I want to talk about. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to do another video game soon. I think there was a bit of a gap between this one and the last one, but yeah, let's keep this train rolling. So, see you later.